When I was a kid, my mom used to tell me stories about my grandpa. He started with nothing and built a business that could have set us up for life. But we never saw a dime of it. I didn't understand why until I got older and learned about the mess with his will. "Eliza, your grandpa was a tough nut," my mom said one chilly evening. We were huddled at our small kitchen table, nursing cups of lukewarm tea. The heater was busted again, and the landlord wasn't quick to fix anything. He only believed in money earned, not given. "Why did he cut us off then? Didn't he think you'd manage his money right?" I asked, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Mom sighed, her eyes tracing the steam rising from her cup. "It wasn't about me managing it. He had this crazy idea. He made a will that only gave his fortune to someone who made it big on their own. $500,000 at least in their business." "That's just cruel," I muttered, incredulous. The idea seemed ridiculous, like a game set by a man who loved his money more than his family. "It was his way or the highway," Mom continued. "When I argued with him, he practically disowned me, saying if I was any good, I'd earn my way without his help. The unfairness of it all gnawed at me. Here we were, scrimping and saving every dime, while someone else was living it up on what should have been ours." From a young age, I had a knack for spotting opportunities to make money. I set up a lemonade stand at the local golf course on sweltering summer days, shouting 50 cents a cup to the thirsty golfers. They couldn't resist the pitch from a freckle-faced kid with a pitcher. "You sure know how to hustle, kiddo," an old golfer named Hank once said, chuckling as he handed over his change. "Keep that up, and you'll be a tycoon one day." I grinned, pocketing the coins. "Just saving up for something big," I'd reply, always thinking about the next venture. It wasn't just lemonade. I made homemade baubles and bracelets from beads I found at the dollar store, selling them at neighborhood block parties, school events, and even at garage sales. Trading wasn't just fun, it felt right, like I was meant to do it. "Eliza's got her own little business empire going," Mom would joke to her friends, with a hint of pride in her voice that made me stand a little taller. But it was sewing that really caught on. When I bought that old sewing machine from a garage sale, it felt like Christmas had come early. Teaching myself to sew wasn't easy. The machine was temperamental, and the tutorials online weren't always clear, especially with the spotty internet connection. But I stuck with it, turning drab thrift store finds into trendy outfits. One day, Sarah sneered at me. "Is that the same shirt you wore last week?" "Yep, gave it a little makeover," I said casually, slamming my locker shut. "You should try it sometime. It might improve your attitude." She scoffed and walked away, but a few other girls lingered. "That was really cool what you did with your shirt. Could you do mine?" one of them asked shyly. "Sure thing," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. "Bring it tomorrow." Word spread quickly, and soon I was taking custom orders. It wasn't just pocket money anymore. It was a real business. People paid good money for uniqueness, and I was all too happy to provide. One sunny afternoon, I took my latest creations to the local street fair. I set up a rickety table, laid out my garments, and waited, heart pounding with excitement. "You think people will buy these?" my friend Mike asked, eyeing the passers-by skeptically. "They'd be crazy not to," I shot back confidently, and they did. My table was swarmed, and I barely had time to collect the money and hand over the clothes. Amidst the chaos, a guy approached, car keys jangling in his hand. "Hey, my car broke down a block from here. Saw your stall. This stuff yours?" he asked, nodding towards my display. "Yeah, all made by me. Need something to pass the time while waiting for a towel?" I joked, handing him a shirt. He laughed, genuinely. "Actually, I was wondering if you do men's stuff too." "Sure do," I replied, pulling out a few pieces I'd experimented with. He examined them, then looked at me with a spark of interest. "You've got talent. Ever think of making this a real business?" "Every day," I said, not missing a beat. His smile widened. "I'm Jack, by the way." "Eliza," I said, shaking his hand, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just another sale. It felt like a doorway swinging wide open. As the day wound down, I counted the cash, a sense of accomplishment washing over me. This was it. I was making it happen, one stitch at a time. "I told you they'd love your stuff," Mike said as he helped me pack up. "Yes, you were right," I admitted, unable to hide my grin. Looks like I might just make that $500,000 mark after all. After Jack and I met at the fair, things took off faster than I'd expected. He wasn't like anyone I knew. He came from money, but he had a way of making you forget about that when you were with him. He was laid back, always laughing and making plans. We started seeing each other more, and it wasn't long before we were seriously dating. One day he said, "Eliza, I think it's time you met my parents. The mere thought made my stomach churn. I knew Jack's family came from old money, the kind that looked down on people like me. Are you sure? I asked, my voice tense. I don't think they'll like me much. Jack brushed it off with a laugh. They'll love you. Don't worry so much. The drive to Jack's parents' house felt interminable. Jack chatted about mundane topics, probably trying to ease the tension, but my stomach was still in knots. When we finally turned into a long driveway, I saw it, a massive house that resembled a museum more than a home. As we walked up to the grand entrance, the door swung open before we could even knock. There stood Jack's mom, Mrs. Thompson, impeccably dressed in a way that made me feel instantly underdressed despite my careful choice of outfit. Jack, darling, she exclaimed, pulling him into a warm hug. Then she turned to me with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. And you must be Eliza. We've heard so much about you. Her words sounded warm, but her tone was anything but. I forced a smile. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Thompson. Jack led me inside, and that's when I met Mr. Thompson. He was a tall, stern-looking man with a firm handshake that felt more like a test than a greeting. Eliza, a pleasure, he said, his voice deep and devoid of emotion. We moved into the living room, which was as grand and cold as the rest of the house. Everything felt stiff and formal. We made small talk, or rather, they did. I mostly nodded and smiled, feeling completely out of my depth. Dinner was served in a dining room straight out of a magazine, with crystal and fine china that looked like it belonged in a display case rather than on the table. As we sat down, the real interrogation began. So, Eliza, Jack tells us you're into fashion design. Mr. Thompson began, eyeing me as though I were a puzzle to be solved. Yes, I run a small business. I design and sell clothing, I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm self-made then. How entrepreneurial, he commented dryly. His tone suggested it was less of a compliment and more of a checklist. Mrs. Thompson joined in with a smile that felt more like a smirk. And your family, dear? What do they do? Well, it's just me and my mom. She's a nurse, I said, feeling the weight of each word. Oh, I see, Mrs. Thompson replied, exchanging a glance with her husband that I couldn't quite interpret. The conversation stumbled along until coffee was served. Then Mrs. Thompson's polite facade slipped. Eliza, I must be honest. We have certain expectations for Jack's partner. Background is important to us, essential for maintaining the family's reputation and legacy. She put her fork down and said flatly, it's clear you've accomplished a lot despite your background, but I don't think you're suitable for our son. I'm afraid. Her words hit me like a slap. I sat there stunned as she got up from the table. I won't waste any more time here, she declared, and left the room without another word. Jack was quick to comfort me, his face flushed with embarrassment. Eliza, please don't take it to heart. She's just set in her ways. It was hard to swallow. The evening had starkly showcased where I stood with his family. Despite Jack's reassurances, the shadow of that dinner lingered, casting a cold pall over what should have been a happy milestone. The engagement happened despite the frosty atmosphere at his parents' house. Although I was over the moon about us, the chill from his parents was something I couldn't easily shake. A few weeks after our engagement, I received a call from Mrs. Thompson. Her voice was as formal as ever. Eliza, I'd like you to come over. We need to discuss something important. When I arrived, both of Jack's parents were waiting. The house felt colder than it ever had, as if all the warmth had been drained from it. Mrs. Thompson wasted no time. Eliza, we've thoroughly investigated your background, she began, her tone sharp and unwelcoming. Mr. Thompson nodded in agreement, his face stern. It's clear you come from a very different world than ours, Mrs. Thompson continued. Frankly, we believe you're after our son's wealth, and we won't risk our family fortune being jeopardized. Her words stung, but before I could react, Mrs. Thompson slid a stack of papers across the table towards me. Since I can't convince Jack to reconsider this marriage, you'll need to sign these, she said flatly. I picked up the papers and saw that they were a prenuptial agreement. It was clear from the document that I wouldn't have any claim to Jack's wealth, nor would any future children. Without hesitation, I signed them. I'm not marrying Jack for his money, I said as I handed the signed papers back to her. Mrs. Thompson looked taken aback, her eyes wide. Even Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, surprised by my quick compliance. I left their house feeling a mix of relief and resentment. At home, I told Jack everything. He laughed it off. Wow, you really showed them. Good for you. But his laughter didn't sit right with me. Aren't you bothered that your mom thinks so lowly of me? She humiliated me. Jack shrugged, still smiling. I get why you're upset, but you know how mom is. She has her reasons, and well, she's not entirely wrong to worry. His words felt like a slap. Not only had his mother insulted me, but now Jack was subtly defending her. It hurt to realize that maybe he wasn't entirely on my side. A year after our engagement, as the wedding drew closer, my life was a whirlwind of excitement and stress. My business, a sportswear brand I had started from scratch, was finally taking off. It was thrilling to see my designs being worn and loved. I had built up a small capital, enough to expand and take on bigger challenges. As for the wedding, I wanted something simple and intimate, but Jack had other ideas. He dreamed of a lavish celebration. Eliza, we're only doing this once. Let's make it big, he'd say with that grin that made it hard to argue. So I agreed, and we planned a grand event. I found myself splitting the bill for a luxurious venue, exquisite catering, and a band that could keep our guests dancing all night. I managed to snag some deals, haggling discounts wherever I could. Old habits die hard. The wedding day was perfect, at least on the surface. Our guests seemed to have the time of their lives, and Jack and I couldn't stop smiling, floating on a bubble of joy. But not everyone was caught up in the festivity. Throughout the evening, I noticed Jack's parents whispering to each other, their faces pinched with disapproval. His mother, ever the social butterfly, circulated the room, subtly dropping hints about her concerns that I was after their family wealth. I overheard her saying to a group of relatives, "It's all very extravagant, isn't it? I just hope she understands the value of money, not just how to spend it." Her words stung more than I anticipated. After the wedding, things didn't settle down. Jack's mom took to social media to lament about Jack marrying someone like me. She voiced her fear of losing her son to a woman she deemed unworthy. Reading those posts was painful. My throat tightened and my eyes burned with not just sadness but frustration. I tried to discuss it with Jack. "Your mom's posts, they're really harsh. Can you talk to them? They don't even know how well the business is doing." Jack sighed, his face troubled. "Eliza, I know it's tough, but let's not rock the boat. My parents are just like this. They think I'm some gold digger. They don't see that I don't need their money." He pulled me close, his voice soothing. I know, but let's ignore it for now. They'll come around. They just need time to see what I see." I nodded, though not entirely convinced. Exhausted from the argument, I'd agreed to let it go. Not because I thought he was right, but because I was too tired to fight. It was easier to focus on my business, pouring my energy into something positive that was mine. Despite the personal turmoil, my business continued to thrive. Orders poured in, and my brand gained a following. I was doing interviews, photo shoots, and discussing partnerships. My days were packed, and I thrived on the hustle. The evening of the charity dinner arrived, held at a swanky downtown hotel. The event was dedicated to supporting sports programs for kids and teenagers. As the main costume designer, I had chosen a blue and white theme for the event, perfectly complementing both the decor and some of my latest sportswear designs. Jack and I entered the grand hall, a space alive with well-dressed guests and shimmering lights. I was nervous but excited to see my designs showcased in such a prestigious setting. However, that excitement quickly faded when we spotted Jack's parents across the room. Their cold stares cut through the warmth of the bustling crowd, and while Jack noticed, he said nothing. Their blatant disregard stung deeply, but I bit my lip and kept walking. As guests began to arrive, I circulated the room, chatting and networking. Jack stayed by my side, his usual charming self, though he seemed a bit overwhelmed by the scale of the event. "You're really pulling out all the stops, huh?" Jack commented as we watched the crowd from a distance. "Go big or go home," I replied with a wink. "Eliza, you've outdone yourself," a familiar voice said from behind me. Turning around, I saw a local sports celebrity who had worn my designs before. "These uniforms are fantastic. Thanks so much. Enjoy the evening." I smiled and handed them a business card. "Let's catch up soon." The event buzzed with energy, the atmosphere electric with enthusiasm and goodwill. Then the moment of truth arrived. The host took the stage to thank the sponsors, and my heart raced with a mix of pride and anxiety as my name was announced as one of the main contributors. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Eliza, whose generous donation of over $300,000 made tonight possible. The presenter boomed through the microphone. The room erupted in applause, but it was abruptly cut short by a shriek from Mrs. Thompson. "Absolutely not," she screamed, drawing the room to shocked silence. She demanded a microphone, and once it was handed to her, she wasted no time. "This is preposterous. Eliza couldn't possibly afford this. She's nothing but a poor beggar using my son's money. She's a cunning predator sneaking into our family to bankrupt us." Her words echoed through the hall, venomous and loud. The presenter, taken aback but composed, quickly tried to correct the situation. "Mrs. Thompson, I assure you, you were mistaken. Eliza's company is extremely successful and fully capable of such generosity. I know this firsthand." The crowd murmured, the tension palpable. In an unexpected move, the presenter passed the microphone to Jack, hoping he would clear the air. Jack's face was a mixture of embarrassment and conflict. He glanced at his parents, then at me, his voice barely a whisper as he spoke into the mic. "I have nothing to say." And with that, he walked over to his parents, leaving me standing alone amidst a sea of whispers. The weight of the moment settled heavily on my shoulders. I felt exposed and humiliated, not only by the accusations but also by Jack's refusal to defend me or affirm the truth about my success. The pride I felt in my contribution was overshadowed by the drama unfolding around me. Stepping into the spotlight, I approached the microphone, my heart pounding but my resolve clear. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions. "Tonight, I'd like to share something very personal about my journey." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. I started as a street entrepreneur, not just to make ends meet, but driven by a dream. That dream led to the creation of a sportswear brand many of you know today. I paused, meeting the eyes of young athletes and seasoned businessmen. When my company's profits hit $500,000, I fulfilled a promise to a very special person, my grandfather. I continued, my voice growing stronger. He left a will stating that his inheritance would go to a relative who made their own success, reaching that exact figure in their business. Whispers filled the hall as I let that sink in. That inheritance has been used not only to fuel my personal growth but to give back through charity, much like tonight's event. I scanned the crowd, some nodding as I unfolded more of my story. After the pandemic, my business didn't just survive, it thrived, growing several times over. Every challenge faced was a stepping stone. As I concluded, I stood before the crowd not just as a business owner but as someone who believes in the power of perseverance and dedication. The room erupted in applause, with some guests rising to their feet. I saw faces light up with respect and admiration, but my gaze briefly met Jack's parents. Their expressions, once haughty, now showed disbelief and embarrassment. They quietly exited the hotel. Jack, looking equally shaken, tried to approach me. "Eliza, I shook my head and walked past him. My emotions were a mix of triumph and heartache. I needed space, not just from the evening's drama, but from everything. I decided to stay at the hotel that night, alone with my thoughts. Later, as I sat in the quiet of my hotel room, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was thick with emotion. "Honey, I saw everything. I just want you to know how proud I am to see you stand up there, telling your story and reclaiming your truth. You're everything I hoped you'd be." After spending the night at the hotel to clear my head, I returned home. The place felt different, heavier, as if the walls themselves held the tension from the last few months. Jack was there waiting. As soon as he saw me, he tried to apologize again. "Eliza, I'm so sorry about everything. Can we just forget all this and start over?" he pleaded, his voice desperate. I shook my head, the decision heavy but clear. "Jack, I can't. I don't want to be with someone who can't stand up for me, who sides with his parents over his wife. It's not just about last night. This has been building for a long time." His face fell, and he reached out, but I stepped back. "I'm filing for divorce," I said firmly. I didn't wait for his response. I gathered a few essentials and left for my mother's house, the one I had recently bought with my grandfather's inheritance. It felt like a sanctuary after the storm. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, thanks to the prenup we had signed, and with no children to consider, it was over quickly. During that time, Jack's parents tried to intervene, calling repeatedly to patch things up, not for my sake, but because their son's lifestyle had changed now that I was out of the picture. I blocked their numbers, not just to silence the constant ringing, but to cut off a past that was holding me back. I heard from friends that Jack had started drinking, lost his job, and eventually, his parents disowned him, not wanting to tarnish their reputation with his downward spiral. Despite everything, I felt a pain of sorrow for him. I never wished him ill, but I knew I needed to move on. I couldn't dwell on the past, only on what could be. Living at my mom's place gave me the peace I needed to think about my next steps. My business was still thriving, and I poured more of myself into it, not just to distract from the divorce, but to rebuild stronger foundations for my future. One evening, sitting in the garden my mom and I had started together, she turned to me with a soft smile. "You did the right thing, Eliza. It's tough, but you're tougher. And I'm here, always." "Thanks, Mom. I know. It's just a lot to process," I replied, feeling the weight of her support. "As long as you remember that you're not just surviving, you're building, learning, and growing. That's what matters," she said, squeezing my hand. She was right. The end of my marriage wasn't just an ending. It was a gateway to a new chapter, one where I could make decisions without second-guessing if someone had my back. One where I could stand on my own, not just as a successful businesswoman, but as a person reshaped by her experiences.